Welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Welcome back to Fallout London, where today we're going to be taking a look at some Webley guns. I wanted to say Webley revolvers, but one of them is not a revolver. So let's talk about the Webley revolver first. These are referred to as the service revolver and the service pistol. For the longest time in my Fallout London run, I thought these were actually the same gun, where I just kept picking them up and I was like, oh, I got another Webley revolver, but they're actually two different guns. So the Webley revolver is modeled very well in this game, and it functions really well in this game. It actually has the whole upper part of the revolver move back and then slide forward, which is how the Webley actually works. It's like an automatic revolver, which is weird, but that is how it functions. This was the main service pistol of the British throughout World War I and World War II, and it fits perfectly in Fallout London for those reasons. It's kind of like seeing the 1911 in the regular Fallout games, which sadly there's not enough 1911s in there, but it makes sense that the Webley would appear here in Fallout London. You can find Webleys actually all throughout London. They're not super uncommon. They're not the most common weapon in the game, but you can buy them from vendors, and you tend to find skeletons have them a lot, or the Tommies. Tommies tend to carry these around too, which makes sense for them. For the stats of the Webley, this one does 120 damage per shot. It does do a lot of damage. The DPS is actually pretty high too, because it has a decent rate of fire of 20, although you do notice that it has a decent amount of kick when you're aiming down sights with it, so it can be a little bit awkward with some of the follow-up shots, but it's not too bad. This one has a massive 341 range to it. It has very long range. This one has 56 accuracy, not the most accurate handgun in the game, but you're probably going to just be using this at close and medium range anyway. This one weighs 3.5 weight, so it's not super heavy. Holds 6 rounds in it, like a proper revolver, and this one is chambered in the 455 Webley round, which is pretty cool, although weirdly enough, also in Fallout London, the 45, which I assume is 45 auto, it has a Webley on the cover of the bullets, which kind of threw me off, because I was thinking maybe they just did 45 and they're just going to have a whole bunch of different guns chambered in 45. That's not true though. There are some weapons that are chambered in 45, like the crude revolver and the Tommy gun, but not the Webley. This is 455, which is correct to the Webley. That is the round that it did actually use. It really threw me off that the Webley is pictured prominently on that box of ammunition, but that might just be an oversight. For the general pros of the Webley, this one has good damage. It has really good damage, high damage whenever you get it, and you can get these pretty early on, although bullets might be a little bit rare, and it has pretty long range. For a handgun, this is one of the longest range handguns in the game. Major cons to these weapons, though, is that they are a little bit rare. You're probably not going to find them right away, and if you do find them from vendors, they're probably going to be a bit expensive, as well as the ammo might be a little bit pricey and kind of hard to come by. So there is some downsides there, but overall the Webley is actually a really solid handgun. For an overall rating for the Webley, I would put this up into A tier. I think it's actually really good. There is a modified version of it as well. I didn't find any rare or unique versions of the Webley, at least by name. You could still get them as legendary drops from enemies though. Also, if you spawn in the 44 revolver, or if you manage to get a 44 or a Western revolver as a unique drop from enemies, it will also be rechambered from 44 into 455. So you can still use it in Fallout London, which actually helped me out quite a bit on my first run through it, because I think I got a mighty Western revolver fairly early on, and that made it pretty easy to get through most of the game. For the mods, I'd recommend going with the advanced receiver. This will just get you the most amount of damage. Pretty straightforward. It's like that on a whole bunch of the weapons that go for Fallout 4 weapons that were modded in. I would go with the long barrel. It gives you longer range and better accuracy. I really like that. It also just looks a little bit better in my opinion, although the short barrel doesn't look bad either. You only have the standard grip, although weirdly enough, you can actually, it at least lets you select that, but you don't get any other options on that, so just go with the standard grip. And then you can actually change out the ammunition loaded into the Webley, and I would highly recommend you go with the explosive rounds, because they give you a lot more damage. It's not as crazy as explosive rounds for like the MG42, which we talked about, mostly because that one's full auto and has a giant magazine. But it is still very strong, and it gives you a good amount of splash damage, even if you're not going with a dedicated explosives build. With all of these into the Webley, it's actually a really solid pistol to be running around with. I absolutely love it, so I'd put it all the way up into S tier. I think it's really good. Now let's move on to the Webley self-loader, the service pistol. This one is a pistol from World War I. This was basically the British first semi-automatic handgun that they had. At least that was somewhat adopted by the military. And this thing is kind of weird looking. It looks kind of like you mixed a 1911 with a Luger and made it a little bit more blocky and chunky. And it's never really been my favorite handgun, but it is kind of a cool handgun to include in a game like this. Service pistol does 62 damage per shot, which is pretty good. It has high DPS as well. This one has a higher rate of fire at 66. This one has 179 range, pretty standard for a handgun. 61 accuracy, which is good. This one weighs 4 weight, so it is a little bit heftier than the revolver. This one holds 7 rounds, so still not a lot. It's still like a single stack magazine for a semi-automatic handgun. You're not getting that much more than the revolver. And this one also shoots the 455 round, which would also be kind of accurate to this. 455 for the revolver and 455 for the semi-auto technically wouldn't be the same in real life, but they are the same caliber, so it makes sense just to combine them into the same thing in this. And I don't really have any problem with that. This gun is a bit more rare. It's a bit harder to get, but you still can find it laying around London, as well as you can buy it from different vendors. For an overall rating for this gun, I'd probably put it into B tier. It's pretty good. It does good damage, but I don't like it as much as the Webley revolver. I think that one's better. For a modified version of this, you can actually mod it out a bit more than the revolver. I'd recommend the advanced receiver on this. That'll get you the most amount of damage. Then go in with the extended barrel. Gives you longer range and better accuracy. I went with the grip stock on mine, which is a little bit interesting. You can actually put a stock on this, but I'm pretty sure it always counts as a pistol. Then the extended magazine, I think that's probably the biggest upgrade for this one, aside from the receiver, which will get you more damage. This one increases your magazine from 7 all the way up to 15. And then for sights, it's your call. I did put glow sights on mine, but it's only the back sights that glow, so it's a little bit awkward. This one can actually come with no back sight. You can just use the front sight. And honestly, that isn't as awkward as you would think it would be. It's kind of okay. And then I put a suppressor on mine too. That way I just get more damage from Mr. Sandman, but the suppressor does take up quite a bit of the front of the gun, and it makes it a little bit difficult to actually see your front sight. So I wasn't the most accurate with this gun, but it definitely got the job done. This was a decent overall handgun. I'd probably put this one into A tier. I like it, but I think the bullets are better spent in the revolver, especially if you have the explosive rounds in the revolver. And that'll do it for some of the British service pistols. And that's pretty much all the pistols in Fallout London that we've talked about. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. Hope that you guys enjoyed it. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.